The ancient pines stood sentinel over the frozen lake, their snow-laden branches sighing under the weight of the endless winter deep within this forgotten valley. A small log cabin huddled against the relentless cold, smoke curling weakly from its chimney like a final, fading breath inside. Elara tended the meager fire, her breath misting in the air despite the hearth's feeble glow. Her father, Kalen, a trapper whose face was etched with lines deeper than the forest paths he once knew, stared into the flames with haunted eyes. It had been weeks since the unnatural blizzard sealed the pass, and longer still since the whispers on the wind began. Sharp, insistent voices promising warmth, promising sustenance, promising an end to the gnawing emptiness that grew stronger each day within their own bellies. The hunger was more than physical. It was a creeping shadow in the soul. Elara watched her father's broad shoulders slump, saw the unfamiliar gleam of desperation in his eyes when he looked at their dwindling stores of dried venison and root vegetables. She felt it too, a cold, hollow ache that seemed to echo the howling wind outside one frigid dawn. Kalen ventured further than usual. Desperate for game, he returned near dusk, empty-handed, his face ashen. The woods, they're silent, Elara, he rasped, his voice raw. No tracks, no birds, only the wind and something else. Something watching that night. The whispers grew louder, clawing at the cabin walls, speaking directly to the aching void inside them. They spoke of ancient power, of the Wendigo's curse, a hunger that consumed flesh and spirit, leaving only a skeletal craving that could never be sated. Elara fought it. She focused on tending the fire, on mending clothes, on singing the old songs her mother taught her, her voice thin but defiant against the oppressive silence. Yet the cold seeped deeper. She caught herself staring at her own hands, wondering. The gnawing emptiness became a constant companion, a whisperer of terrible, tempting thoughts. Kalen saw the change in his daughter, a new sharpness in her gaze, a restless energy that replaced her weariness, a disturbing quickness in her movements. The loving light in her eyes flickered, sometimes replaced by a ravenous, unfamiliar gleam that mirrored the stories he'd heard whispered by trappers around dying campfires. Stories of the Wendigo's never-ending hunger, a curse born of desperation and isolation. In the deepest winter, one moonless night, the storm screamed like a banshee. The cabin groaned. Then came the sound, a scraping, like bone on frozen wood. Right outside the door a smell followed, thick and putrid, like spoiled meat and ancient decay. Terror, colder than the deepest ice, seized Kalen. He barred the door, pushing their heavy table against it. Elara stood frozen in the center of the single room, her face pale, her eyes wide, but not solely with fear. There was a terrifying recognition there, a dreadful fascination with the monstrous presence just beyond the thin barrier. The hunger within her seemed to resonate with the creature outside, a silent, awful communion. Kalen knew then the curse wasn't just at the door. It was already inside, claiming his child. As the scraping intensified, a low, guttural growl vibrated through the logs, a sound that promised only consumption. Kalen looked at Elara. Truly looked, he saw the desperate struggle within her, the daughter he cherished battling the monstrous hunger taking root. He saw the flicker of terror in her eyes, the plea she couldn't voice. He remembered the legends whispered with dread. Only a sacrifice born of pure, selfless love could break the Wendigo's hold, could fill the endless void not with flesh, but with something stronger. A profound calm settled over him, washing away his own gnawing hunger, replacing it with a fierce, protective certainty. He knew what he had to do, a terrible, final act of love with surprising strength born of absolute resolve. Kalen pulled the heavy table away from the door. He turned to Elara, his eyes filled with an unbearable tenderness. Remember the summer berries, little fox? He whispered, his voice thick with emotion, using her childhood nickname. Remember the warmth? Before she could react, before the horror dawning on her face could fully form, he yanked the door open. The freezing wind exploded inward, extinguishing the fire framed in the doorway, illuminated by the faint, eerie glow of the northern lights flickering above, stood a towering figure of nightmare. Elongated limbs ending in bone claws, antlers like dead branches scraping the lintel, eyes like bottomless pits reflecting a ravenous void. The stench was overwhelming. Kalen didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, not away, directly into the creature's path. His arms spread wide, not in surrender, but in embrace. "Take me," he commanded, his voice ringing with a strange power. "Feed on this, and leave her be." The Wendigo lunged, a blur of shadow and bone. Alara screamed. A sound ripped from her soul, but instead of the crunch of bone, a blinding, warm light erupted where Kalen stood. It wasn't fire, but pure, radiant love. The memory of lullabies, of strong hands lifting her onto his shoulders, of shared laughter by a summer stream, of a father's unwavering protection. The light flooded the cabin, pouring into the Wendigo's gaping maw, into its hollow bones, filling the endless void not with substance, but with the overwhelming, undeniable force of Kalen's sacrifice. The creature recoiled, shrieking not in triumph, but in agonized confusion. The terrible hunger met something it couldn't consume, couldn't comprehend. A warmth that seared its icy core. The blinding light pulsed once, fiercely, and then winked out. The Wendigo was gone. The wind died abruptly. Only silence remained, and the faint, lingering scent of pine needles and wood smoke. Alara stood alone in the sudden stillness, the terrible hunger within her extinguished, replaced by a devastating, hollow grief, and the enduring, impossible warmth of her father's final, perfect gift. The long winter eventually loosened its grip. Green shoots pushed through the thawing earth near the cabin door. Alara lived, carrying the profound absence of her father. A quiet space filled now not with hunger, but with the enduring echo of his sacrifice. On clear nights, when the northern lights danced like celestial spirits above the whispering pines, she would sit outside, wrapped in his old bearskin coat. She could almost feel him beside her, a silent, protective presence. The valley remained quiet, the legend of the Wendigo a chilling memory, but Alara knew a different truth. She knew that within the deepest, coldest hunger, there existed a force stronger than any curse. A love so vast, so willing, it could fill even the most endless void with its everlasting light.